You know, some of history's greatest thinkers and greatest paradigm shifters have been shelved because of their ideas, and I've talked about some of them before, such as Machiavelli and others. But today I want to talk about one I think has been placed in the annals of history and deep in the annals of history because of what some considers radical ideas, and radical ideas have changed the world. But I think I know exactly why this particular person has been shelved, because his radical ideas, as some would call them, I don't think they're radical in my humble opinion, but I think I know why his has been shelved and why his opinions have been called radical, and that is because his is easily politicized. And it's interesting because it's also financial gain for those who would use it and his philosophy as financial gain. And that leads me into who this person is, and that is Thomas Sowell. This guy. And interestingly, I think he should be considered a historian and not just an economist in which he was trained. And I think gravely misunderstood, such as people like I said, Niccolo Machiavelli and others. But what if Sowell's greatest gift to us was not examining racism, equality, and fairness, but having us question why we believe it? Let's talk about it. Hey, yeah, hi there, guys. So let's get after it. But before I do that, I think I need to clarify something that I said in the intro about the fact that he's been relegated to the annals of history. What do I mean by that? You're not going to see Thomas Sowell necessarily be invited on a liberal TV network to talk about issues such as discrimination, racism, and equality, simply because of his philosophy on it. And that's what we're going to get into, not necessarily to talk about Thomas Sowell's philosophy in depth, but why it is that we do the things that we do in terms of shelf people when their points of view disagrees with ours, or when their points of views seem radically different from the mainstream. And I say that because even though he's at the Hoover Institution, like I said, not going to be invited very often to a liberal discussion, and that's unfortunate because his philosophy is not radical. It just goes, like I said, I think I know why, and that is because it goes against the mainstream's argument, and therefore against their financial gain and whatever other agenda gains they have, because his philosophy is simple. He's just a skeptic towards single cause explanations. And why would anyone disagree with that if you believe in science? Right? Why would you, right out of the gates, why would you disagree with the fact that his skepticism is towards single cause explanations? I mean, when different groups produce different outcomes, it just begs the question that the conditions preceding that outcome might have just been different for all of these groups and all of these individuals, to include education, culture, demographics, family history, occupational choices. That's all he's arguing. And it doesn't mean that he thinks discrimination never exists either. Another myth. He just explicitly identifies it as one of the forces that can produce inequality, but in and of itself, it is not the only cause. And he proves it by going across cultures and ethnic groups, where he proves that They've existed under radically different political arrangements over time and have produced the same things that we see in America. So I ask the question, why is it then that in America we subscribe to the single cause argument and shelve people like Dr. Sowell? That's all I'm asking. I mean, because when it comes to inequality too, he argues that unequal outcomes are not self-explanatory. Kind of goes back to his overall philosophy. He rejects the assumption that equal human worth should naturally produce approximately the same equal group outcomes. Again, based on some of those things that I said, because he argues that people don't enter the world the same way, or the workplace, right? With identical histories, age, knowledge, locations, networks. Fair? Again, if you believe in science, why would you argue against findings, factual findings? Because it's simple. It goes against so many agendas, and I'm going to come to why or how it affects our smaller lives, right? Our day-to-day, our families. But if Group A earns less than Group B, then that doesn't necessarily mean that Group B or the systems that existed did something unfair to deprive Group A. That's a rational argument. It's not a biased argument, it's a rational argument. But again, people like him are shelved for simple explanations such as this one. And you say, then why am I talking about it? Here's the crux. And I'll read it verbatim for you. This will just make sense to you, because too many people tend to be fighting too many battles that they were never asked to fight, or they're not fully informed on the cause or the systems involved in, let's say, these people's struggles and whatever it is that they're fighting on behalf of. But the people that shelve Dr. Sowell simply have the agenda and believe that minority groups, specifically blacks in this case, because we're talking about Dr. Sowell, who is black, but they have this mindset that because of the past and those narrowed looks at the past, in terms of broadening it out and look at each group and each individual in terms of geography, age, education, history, knowledge, locations, networks. Instead of doing that, they narrow it down to the cause is the, dare I say, the infringement of the white man upon the minority black man. And again, myself and Dr. Sowell aren't arguing that that did not occur. He's arguing, and I agree with him, that in and of itself, it is not the only root cause for why the black man struggles. Part of why Dr. Sowell argues is from giving us a head start without us asking for one or necessarily needing one. And here's what I'm going to read verbatim for you, and you just think about this, all right? The first one I'm going to read is, man, I'm going to get in so much trouble, is from Frederick Douglass, The Freed Slave, and this is 1869, on the question of what to do with the Negro, as the word was used back then, all right? Frederick Douglass. Everybody has asked the question, what shall we do with the Negro? I have had but one answer from the beginning. Do nothing with us. Now fast forward from 1869 to 1965, and this is President Lyndon Johnson, who declared during the Civil Rights Movement, Lyndon Johnson, you do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bring him up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair. What are the implications? And anyone's implication is their implication. What does it imply? A freed slave, 1869, saying, don't need your help. And fast forward to 1965, and we need to be put at the front of the line in the race of humanity. It sounds good. It sounds good. And I've done episodes on looks good on paper and sounds good in theory. It does. The morality of things. And that is usually the argument of those who oppose Sowell's argument, is the emotional morality of the argument and not the factual, critical thinking reality of the situation you're creating by doing what you think you're doing, by righting wrongs that have other ways of handling that. And there's a term, or there are terms for what this is that I'm talking about, and it's constrained viewer, the constrained vision and the unconstrained vision. And the constrained vision, I'll give you an example, is this that I just read for you is an example. The observer sees what looks like a wrong and immediately wants to right that wrong within the context of all that they see. Whereas the unconstrained, or I should say the constrained vision, the constrained viewer, sees that, let's say, discrimination, and says, wait, let me peel this back, because this situation might in and of itself be unique and not be the norm or factual in all situations. The constrained vision, to take things apart, to use facts and not go in with agendas, because that already just blinders, self-inflicted blinders when you go into these things with agendas. And I'm not going to go into a lot of the facts. I might put them down in the description as links to the things, the historical facts that has happened in this particular conversation, where good ideas or good intentions didn't pan out so well, and people suffered for that. Still suffering for that. And you say, how does that fit? You said you were going to bring it full circle and put it in our lives. But before I do that, I also said that I alluded to Machiavelli in the open, and it's the same thing with Machiavelli. Methods, right? Methods. Machiavelli, to the honest broker and the critical thinker, isn't or wasn't wrong in any of his theories, really. What people think he's so evil for and dislike him for, some even hate him for, are his methods, the way he says to go about these things. But again, I ask, isn't that what we want from our princes, our politicians, to be ruthless on our behalf within morality, ethics, and reason? And that's all Machiavelli was asking, and that is all Sowell is asking or saying. You cannot, because you have a benefit, look at things and claim you're doing it critically when you negate other facts that lend against your argument. And then you get shelved, or in Machiavelli's instance, you get exiled. You don't get invited to discussions and conversations about particular topics because your view or points of view isn't a part of the paradigm. And until the paradigm shifts, we'll always have people shelved. So in our lives, it is sad, but I ask you, and I bet you know someone who doesn't talk to a family member because they're beholding to an issue. Usually politics and or religion, or how to raise the children. And we exile, modern day exile, family members for having a point of view. And here's the irony and the hypocrisy in it. The majority of us teach our children to have a point of view, to stand up and argue when you see a wrong. But yet when they do and they grow up and do it, they're exiled. No longer invited to Thanksgiving, family reunions. And I chuckled, but it's unfortunate and it's serious. But I brought it home full circle because we see it in society every day. We see it in our politics. We see it in religion. But if we don't start small, like I like to say, and care on purpose about our grass before we criticize our neighbor's grass, metaphorically, about it's too tall and it needs cutting. Can't live in glass house and throw stones. Right? But it's the human condition. It's the human condition. But I just say, everyone has the inherent right to an opinion. It's all about approach. And I have not yet watched an episode, a discussion, or anything that I am privy to with Dr. Sowell, where he's been an affront with his opinions. He just has facts. And it's sad and unfortunate, like I said, that people are afraid of facts. Facts. And before I go, I think I owed you a more detailed biography of Dr. Sowell, so you just take a listen and then we'll wrap it up, all right? I appreciate you being here, by the way. If you're still with me, thanks for being here. Here's to you. You guys are rock stars. But Dr. Sowell's bio. Thomas Sowell was born June 30, 1930 in Gastonia, North Carolina. He's a renowned American economist, social theorist, and senior fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institution. He's a veteran of the Korean War and has earned degrees from Harvard, Columbia, and a PhD under Milton Friedman at the University of Chicago. He's taught at Cornell, Brandeis, and UCLA, and has authored over 40 books and wrote a nationally syndicated column. A leading voice in Black conservatism, he's received the National Humanities Medal and mentored figures like Justice Clarence Thomas, while interestingly declining high-level government roles. All right, folks, I think I want to leave it there in just wrapping up about how we can grow, and then the individual piece, how we too can grow, because what I just did here in 2015 and beyond or before wasn't the same person. This wasn't the same critical thinking, asking the tough questions and seeking to find some solace in the facts, not necessarily answers, but some solace in the facts, just so we can walk a little bit more in compromise with this absurd universe. All right, so That's all I have. But until our next conversation, you be good out there. Take care of each other and listen to when someone is trying to speak to us. Don't let people speak into emptiness. All right? So until our next conversation, you be good out there. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and we'll talk again soon. I'll see you.